The sea never tells the same story twice. In the village of Kalaupapa on the quiet cliffs of Molokai, life was slow and symmetrical. Fishermen told time by the tides. Breadfruit trees grew where they always had. Dogs barked at passing boats like clockwork. And in the middle of it all, Tama lived like a stone at the ocean's edge, still, sturdy, but slowly reshaped by things he would never say out loud. He was 41, a fisherman by trade, a smoker of banana-wrapped AKU by reputation. They said his grilled fish could cure hangovers and heartbreak. And maybe that was true. People trusted Tama, not just for his food, but because he was the kind of man who listened more than he spoke. Who remembered how people liked their coffee, who always offered the last piece of grilled pineapple, even when he wanted it. His wife, Mela, was 34. She worked in tourism, guiding eco-hikers, arranging snorkeling tours, sometimes flying to Oahu or Maui for meetings. She wore aviator sunglasses that mirrored the sky and laughed with her whole mouth. Mela was beautiful in the way the sea is when it hides its storms. They had no children, but they had Paku, a half-blind mutt with a crooked tail who slept at Tama's feet like a hairy old soul. And then there was Kimo, Tama's oldest friend, the kind who shows up with rum and vanishes with your secrets. They had surfed together at 16, gotten drunk together at 18, and buried parents within a year of each other. Kimo was part of the family, or so Tama believed. Kimo visited often, sometimes uninvited, sometimes drunk, always welcome. He'd crash on the futon, talk about some girl from Maui, and laugh until the geckos on the wall froze to listen. But something had shifted. It was Mela first, the way she began to answer questions with one-word replies, the way she stopped sitting beside Tama during dinner, how she left her phone face down, or how she once flinched when Tama reached to brush sand from her cheek. Then came the morning. The sun had barely broken over the ridgeline when Tama woke to the soft creak of the front door. He didn't move. He listened. Footsteps. Light. Familiar. Not Mela. He watched from the shadows as Kimo emerged. Shirtless. Carrying his flip-flops in hand. He moved like a thief. Like someone who had forgotten what silence owed the morning. Tama said nothing. Kimo paused at the gate. Looked around. Then slipped away. Moments later, Mela stirred from the bedroom. Stretching like someone who had slept alone. "Sleep okay?" she asked, avoiding his eyes. "Yeah," Tama lied. She made coffee. Paku growled quietly under the table. The next clue was a piece of lace. He found it in the laundry 2 days later. A crimson undergarment with gold trim. Too small for Mela. Not her style. Not her size. Not hers. He held it for a long time before folding it into his fishing jacket. He didn't ask. He didn't accuse. Because Tama wasn't the type to confront until he was certain. He wasn't built for rage. He was built for waiting. For letting things rise to the surface in their own time. But the silence inside him began to split. At night, Mela would hum in the shower. A tune he didn't recognize. Her shampoo smelled different. She began using coconut oil on her legs again, something she hadn't done in years. Her phone pinged at odd hours. She smiled more at strangers, less at him. Kimo came over again that week. Brought Poke and beers. Laughed louder than the jokes deserved. Mela joined them on the lanai, wearing the green dress Tama used to love. She poured Kimo an extra drink without asking. And Tama watched. He didn't taste the beer. He didn't hear the waves. All he saw was the flash of Kimo's hand brushing Mela's when she reached for the lighter. She didn't pull away fast enough. And in that second, the quiet inside Tama cracked. But still, he smiled. He toasted. He fed them both grilled AKU with lemongrass and sesame oil. Later that night, when Mela said she was too tired to talk, he simply nodded. He waited until she slept. Then he walked to the beach, stood barefoot on the cold sand, and whispered into the wind. "You sure, old sea, you sure this is how the story goes?" The ocean didn't answer, but a wave lapped close enough to wet his toes. Tama looked down, and in the moonlight, he saw the footprints beside his own. smaller, lighter, walking away. He didn't need proof, he already knew. Something had changed. The story was starting to write itself. And it would not end well. But for now, Tama returned home. He lay beside Mela, who slept facing the wall. He curled beside Paku, who whimpered in his dreams. And he closed his eyes, waiting for the tide to turn. The sea had begun to whisper things Tama couldn't unhear. He walked differently now, quieter, more deliberate, not out of fear, but out of awareness. Awareness that every gesture, every smile, every sidelong glance from Mela or Kimmo might carry weight, might confirm what he already knew in his bones. That something sacred had been broken. He didn't ask questions, he didn't confront, but his mind, once content to drift like the tide, had become sharp. Like reef stone under shallow water. Then came the bridge. It was an old one. Nothing more than planks and rusted nails stretched over a quiet stream near the edge of the forest. Tama hadn't been there in months. But when he passed it on a routine walk, something pulled him closer, a whisper in the reeds, a smell of perfume too elegant for Molokai. Later that night, he opened Mela's old phone again. He scrolled further, found another message, this one with a timestamp from weeks ago. Next time under the bridge. Bring that wine again. Still dreaming of that night. Tama didn't shake, he didn't cry, he just closed the phone and placed it back where he found it. And in that silence, something inside him settled, not peace, not yet, but certainty. In the following days, he observed. He didn't stalk or accuse, he noticed. Like a fisherman watches the shadows of fish. Kimmo visited less, but when he did, there was a nervous energy beneath his jokes, a stutter in his laugh. He no longer finished his drink. He didn't meet Tama's eyes. And Mela, her restlessness grew. She took longer showers, wore lip gloss for trips to the post office. When Tama asked how work was, she always said, fine, too fast. Once, she said she had a migraine but left the house anyway. The world around Tama grew sharper, its colors more vivid. The sea was bluer, the clouds heavier, the silence between words stretched longer. One afternoon, Tama decided to take Paku on a longer walk than usual. Through the jungle trail, past the cliffs, around the northern bend where the tourists didn't go. That's when he saw them. Far enough not to hear, but close enough to see. Kimmo and Mela, in the grove, standing too close. Kimmo reached up and brushed her hair behind her ear. Mela tilted her head, a gesture she only used when she trusted someone deeply. They didn't kiss, they didn't speak, but their silence was more intimate than anything Tama had seen between them before. He watched, not moving, not breathing. When he finally turned away, the world did not spin. It merely dimmed. That night, Mela made fish stew, told a story about a coworker who got seasick, laughed at her own punchline. Tama nodded, smiled when she looked his way, fed bits of taro to Paku, then excused himself. Outside, in the darkness, Tama fell to his knees and vomited into the soil beside the breadfruit tree. The night was still, but Paku barked, once, twice, then kept going. Mela came out, asked what was wrong. Tama said it must have been the shrimp. She rubbed his back. Her hand was warm, but it felt like a stranger's touch. Inside his chest, his heart didn't race. It slowed, like it was learning how to wait again. Because now, the question was no longer if. It was when. When did they begin? When would they fall? And when would the sea, so full of secrets, finally carry this one away? He tucked Paku in early, sharpened a knife not for use, but for habit, sat on the porch for hours listening to the wind. Somewhere, Mela was texting. He could see the screen light flickering through the bedroom curtain. She didn't know he was watching. And he didn't tell her. Because some truths do not need to be said to be known. They live in the silence. And in that silence, Tama was becoming someone else. Someone even he couldn't yet name. Molokai was a quiet island. But it had many eyes. Tama learned that quickly, and he knew how to look without being seen. When Mela told him she was going to Honolulu for a conference, he didn't ask questions. He helped her pack, even folded her favorite sarong. She smiled, touched his cheek, said she'd be back in 3 days. She left on the morning ferry. But that night, Tama followed. Not to Honolulu, he had no need. He followed a different trail. Mela had forgotten her second phone, the one she thought he didn't know about. It pinged from a small house tucked behind palm trees on the southern side of the island. Kimo's house. Tama sat in the brush for hours. Watched the lights flick on. Watched shadows move inside. Laughter drifted through the window, hers and Kimo's. Familiar, playful, then hushed. He didn't need to see more. But he stayed, waited, and recorded. Through the cracked window, he caught snippets of their voices. He has no clue. He still thinks I'm on the mainland. You sure he won't find out? He never asks. That's the thing about Tama. He trusts too much. Pause. A laugh. Let's keep it that way, until we figure out the rest. Tama closed the recorder. Walked home in the dark. That night, he fed Paku early and sat in silence. The firepit glowed low. Mela wouldn't be home for 2 more days. But her betrayal had already arrived. In the morning, he went to the docks and bought fish. Not just any fish, pufferfish. Rare, beautiful, dangerous. He said it was for a special order, a festival. He lied. No one questioned. Tama was respected, trusted. He had handled fish all his life. Who would doubt the man with the cleanest knife on the island? Back home, he practiced, not preparation, he already knew how. It was reverence. The blade must be precise. The cut must be perfect. One slip, and the poison would spread. But he did not slip. He never had. Days passed. Mela returned. She smelled of foreign soap and citrus. Kissed his neck like nothing had changed. Brought him a souvenir, a tiny glass bottle filled with colored sand. From Waikiki, she said. He nodded, placed it on the shelf. Beside it, a photograph of the 3 of them, him, Mela, and Kimo, from years ago. That night, he lay awake, heard her breathing, heard her dream, and remembered something strange. Weeks before, at a small backyard party, he had overheard Kimo's mother. She'd been drinking, speaking to another elder. Those 2 always danced too close. Even back when he was marrying Mela. I told my son to stay away. But some temptations don't pass. He hadn't understood it then. He did now. It had started before the wedding. Maybe it had never ended. Tama's world didn't collapse. It crystallized. He began keeping a log. A timeline. Where Mela had been. When Kimo had been away. The overlapping days. The gaps in their stories. The photos with date stamps that didn't match the stories they told. He followed Kimo once more. Saw him with another woman. Not Mela. Someone younger, dressed in bright city clothes. They kissed behind the surf shop like teenagers. So, even his betrayal wasn't pure. That night, Tama laughed. Not out loud, not in joy, but in disbelief. They had betrayed him. And each other. Not just in flesh, but in memory. In truth, in all the quiet ways that trust gets eaten from the inside. The next day, Tama sharpened his knife again. Not the kitchen one, the ceremonial one, passed down from his grandfather. He opened the family book. Read the old stories. There was one his grandmother used to whisper, of a fisherman betrayed by blood and bone. Who prepared a final feast. Who served pufferfish with a smile. Not all poison kills, she'd said, some just sets the story right. He set the table, 3 plates, for a dinner that hadn't yet been scheduled, but was already decided. The invitation came in the form of a handwritten note, folded neatly beside a bottle of sake on Kimo's porch. Dinner, one last meal before the tide changes. Bring Mela. Tama signed it simply, T. Kimo laughed when he read it. Told Mela, he's finally trying to be civil. Maybe the old man softened. Mela smiled, unsure. Her stomach turned, but she chalked it up to nerves. Not guilt, not exactly. That night, the table was set for 3. Tiki torches flickered in the trade winds. A garland of shell flowers hung on the fence. Paku lay curled by the door. eyes wide, unmoving. Tama stood by the grill. Fish sizzled, brushed with herbs and a subtle glaze. He served it with taro, seaweed salad, and a red chili sauce passed down from his grandfather. Plates were portioned with meticulous balance. "Smells incredible," Kimmo said, clapping him on the back. Mela kissed Tama's cheek. "Thanks for this. I know things have been complicated." Tama smiled. "Tonight, let's forget all that. Let's eat like family." They did. Conversation flowed. The sake helped. Kimmo talked about moving to Maui. Mela mentioned a possible promotion. Tama listened, laughed, poured more drinks, and watched. They both cleaned their plates. He didn't. Within an hour, Kimmo began to sweat. His hands shook. He asked for water. Mela tried to steady him, but her fingers trembled too. Tama fetched the jug, calm as ever. Then Kimmo collapsed. Mela screamed. She clutched her stomach, then stumbled to her knees. Tama didn't rush to help. He stood over Kimmo's body, watching the final spasms. "What did you do?" Mela cried, voice hoarse. Tama looked at her, then at the fish bones, then at the stars. "I cleaned everything," he said, "inside and out." An ambulance came. Too late for Kimmo, not too late for Mela. At the hospital, doctors noted pufferfish toxin, in small doses, often undetectable, but combined with alcohol, fatal. The police arrived next. They asked questions. Tama answered with stillness. A young detective noticed the fish supplier receipt, a rare type purchased the week before. He traced it back. They came for Tama 3 days later. He did not run. At the station, he said only one thing. "I set the table. They chose to eat." The island whispered again. Some said he was a monster. Others called it justice. Some simply shook their heads and muttered about curses. Old blood. And what happens when betrayal meets tradition? Paku was given to a neighbor. The house was locked. The shell garlands faded in the sun. And in a cell where the sea couldn't reach, Tama sat, still, clean, waiting for the tide to turn again. Tama was sentenced to 25 years in prison. The courtroom had been full but silent. No outbursts, just the slow weight of judgment. Mela did not attend. She had already left Molokai. Some said she went to Oahu. Others heard she changed her name and moved to the mainland. No one knew for certain. No one asked. The news spread quickly. For a week, Tama's name was on every radio, every whispering corner of the island. Headlines read, "Molokai fisherman kills friend in poison dinner." But locals had their own versions. He was betrayed. He just cleaned house. He did it the old way. The island way. It's wrong. But it's not unheard of. No one forgot, but no one agreed. In Halawa Correctional Facility, Tama kept to himself. He refused interviews, refused visitors, but he wrote. His journal became a collection of verses. Not long, not loud, short, clean lines about the ocean, knives, salt, and silence. One poem simply read, "Fish don't lie, they just die open-eyed." He titled the notebook, "To Those Who Leave and Those Who Stay." It was passed around by guards. A local professor published a few pieces in a literary journal. Readers were divided. Was this remorse? Or just reflection? Back on Molokai, time passed slowly. The house remained empty. Neighbors trimmed the lawn once a month. No one touched the shell garlands. They crumbled in the wind. Paku, the old dog, died in his sleep one winter night. A fisherman buried him behind the smoke pit. Kimmo was buried quietly. His family did not hold a large service. Too many questions. Too much shame. His mother moved to Hilo. Mela never sent word. 1 year, on the anniversary of the dinner, someone placed 3 red stones at the doorstep of Tama's home. No note, just stones, the color of blood and lava. Children grew up hearing the tale of the quiet man, the cheating wife, the best friend turned ghost. They whispered it at bonfires and dared each other to walk past his old gate at night. But not everyone feared him. Some remembered the way he spoke at fish markets, how he folded leaves with reverence, how he never raised his voice. A teacher at the local school read one of his poems in class. Afterward, a boy raised his hand. Is it true? Did the fish know who lied? The teacher didn't answer. Instead, she looked out the window. To the ocean, calm, endless, reflecting only what you brought to it. And the class fell silent. Tama never wrote a second book. But on the 25th page of his first, scrawled faintly in the corner, were the only words he never showed the world. I loved them. That was the first mistake. And maybe the last truth he ever told. 10 stories, 10 islands, 10 betrayals woven deep into the sands of Hawaii. Some ended in silence, some in blood, all in truth. But if you thought paradise was where it ended, think again. Next, welcome to Florida. A place where affairs hide behind orange groves, luxury condos, and the glow of poolside secrets. Where every lie has a tan, and every truth ends with a storm. Stay tuned for Series 10 True Affair Stories from Florida. Because sunshine doesn't always mean innocence.